Some people fight. Some people flee. Some people freeze. And for a long time, that was the dominant language we used to explain stress. The fight or flight response. You either face the threat, escape the threat, or, as a later model also described, sometimes you freeze in front of the threat. And that model is useful. It explains a lot. It explains why your heart starts beating faster before a presentation. It explains why your mouth gets dry when someone asks you a question in English. It explains why a meeting can feel strangely similar to standing at the edge of a swimming pool in winter. Technically, nothing terrible is happening, but your whole body is screaming like, please don't make me jump. But then researchers started to notice something important. The fight or flight response did not explain the whole human stress response. Especially when looking at stress responses in women, the psychologist Shelley Taylor and her team proposed another pattern, which is the tend and befriend. And this is where it gets interesting to language learning. Because tend and befriend does not mean women are simply more emotional. It does not mean men do not need support. It doesn't mean every woman reacts one way and every man reacts another way. It means that under stress, the body may not only prepare to attack, escape, or shut down. It may also try to create safety through connection, through talking, through checking, through naming what feels threatening, through reaching for someone who can help regulate the situation before the person walks into it. And one of the biological mechanisms researchers have proposed behind this response is oxytocin. Oxytocin is often simplified as the bonding hormone, which sounds cute, almost like something you would read on a wellness Instagram post, but in this context, it is much more practical than cute. It is connected to affiliation, trust, caregiving, and social bonding, which means that for some people, safety does not arrive only through silence, control, or individual preparation. Safety arrives through connection, through saying out loud, this meeting is making me nervous. I know what I want to say, but I'm afraid I'll freeze. I'm scared they'll ask me something and I won't understand. I feel stupid when I have to ask someone to repeat. Or I don't want to sound too direct. Or I don't want them to think I'm not senior enough. And when that fear is spoken, something changes. The fear stops being a huge dark shape in the corner of the room and becomes an object on the table. Still uncomfortable, still real, but now we can look at it. We can name it. We can decide what to do with it. And this is why in my work, I do not treat preparation as only linguistic. Of course, we need phrases and we need vocabulary and we need pronunciation, structure, fluency, and practice. But before some students can perform the meeting, they need to metabolize the meeting. They need to talk through the emotional weather of the situation. Who is it going to be there? What is at stake, at risk, in danger? What happened last time? Which accent makes them nervous? Which person in the meeting makes them feel small? Which part of the conversation feels like the moment feels like the moment where everything could go wrong? Let me repeat the question. Which part of the conversation feels like the moment where everything could go wrong? That is not wasting time in a lesson. That is regulation with that student. That is the nervous system trying to find a safe entrance into performance. And this is where the difference matters in class. Not as a rigid division between men and women, not as a stereotype and not as a rule, but as a reminder that people do not access safety in the same way. Some students need to speak the fear before they can train the performance. Other students need to train the performance before they can even recognize the fear. Some students feel safer when they can talk through the situation first. And other students feel safer when they have a structure, a strategy, a phrase, a drill, a stimulation, a way to respond. So imagine two people standing in front of the same difficult conversation in English. One person is going to say, give me the structure, give me the key phrases, let's practice the worst case scenario. Interrupt me, challenge me, ask me follow-up questions. I want to know how to respond. The person is looking for safety through strategy. They need the map, they need the route. They need the possible obstacles. They need to rehearse the movement until the body understands, okay, I know what to do if this happens. In these cases, I tend to first apologize to students because I'm going to be like pushing them, and that is uncomfortable. And I'm going to be asking for repetition. Your phrase was okay. Let's improve it because now you know what you're talking about. And I'm going to be like shorter, faster, solve it. Sometimes they just freeze and I'm like, you need to solve it. Come on, chop, chop. Don't overthink it. You have a message to deliver. And sometimes I'm this strict, but first I analyze with which students I can do this. Generally speaking, and based on this research, I generally can do this, and I'm repeating the generally, I generally can do this with men, that they are more on this fight or flight response. Either they face the problem and they fight it, they confront it, or they fly away. In those moments, I'm like, chop, chop, you need to solve the problem. You need to give an answer. The typical question, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. The typical in interviews, like, solve it. You have a message to deliver or a presentation. With women that physiologically speaking, based on science, there is a release of oxytocin instead of testosterone. They tend to fight less and they need to talk more about the problem. So sometimes they are explaining something, they freeze and they need to talk about it. So I let them do that and I tend to be gentler with them. But again, I analyze the context based on science and, of course, the student. So on the second example, another person would say, wait, before we practice, I need to tell you why this meeting makes me nervous. And then they explain the context, the client, the boss, the previous mistake, the fear of being judged, the fear of sounding too basic, the fear of being interrupted, the fear of losing authority. That person is looking for safety through connection. They need to bring the fear into the room before they can work with it. Same meeting, same English, same professional goal. Different access points to safety. And this is the part teachers, coaches, trainers, whoever you want, they need to understand. If someone needs connection before performance and you push them straight into role play, the body may close. They may freeze. They may overthink. They may say, I don't know, even when they do know. They may leave the class thinking their English is worse than it is. But if someone needs a strategy before emotional processing and you keep them talking about how they feel for too long, they may disconnect. They may get impatient. They may feel the class is too abstract. They may want the tool, the phrase, the drill, the simulation, the thing they can actually use when the meeting starts. So the question is not, do men and women learn differently? The better question is, how does this person's nervous system create safety before speaking English under pressure? Because once I understand that, I can choose the right entrance. For some students, we start with language. We build a clean opening line. We prepare 3 ways to interrupt politely. We practice how to ask for clarification. We rehearse how to answer a difficult question. We simulate under pressure. We simulate pressure until the situation feels less unknown. And for other students, we start with the fear around the language. We identify the exact moments where the body panics. We separate reality from imagination. We turn the I'm going to sound terrible into something more specific, like I'm afraid I won't understand the follow-up question. And once the fear becomes specific, the training becomes possible. Because you can't train a fog, but you can train a moment. You can train, what do I say if I don't understand? What do I say if I need time? What do I say if I lose my train of thought? What do I say if I disagree? What do I say if someone interrupts me? Or if my accent shows? And this is the shift that changes everything. We stop treating fear as something that should disappear before the student speaks. We treat fear as information. Fear tells us where the training has to go. If the fear is, I won't understand, we train clarification. If the fear is, I'll freeze, we train recovery phrases. If the fear is, I'll sound too direct, we train tone. If the fear is, I'll lose authority, we train concise, confident answers. If the fear is, I'll make a mistake, we train repair. If it is, they'll think I'm not good enough, we train presence. Because this is something that happened in class. It's not the same to do this, that to show yourself like this. It's not only how you project yourself to your audience, but also how you are telling your brain that you feel. Because your brain is going to understand like, okay, I'm showing myself. I'm opening myself. I'm safe. I'm not hiding. If I'm hiding, I'm in danger. But if I do this, I'm telling my brain, I'm safe. I'm in control. I'm showing myself. And that is also train. That is presence. Because adult English is not only about adding more language. Sometimes it is about building a bridge between what the person knows and what their body can access under pressure. That bridge looks different depending on the person. Sometimes it looks like connection. Sometimes it looks like repetition, or it may look like structure or like role play. It may look like talking for 10 minutes before the first sentence comes out, or it may look like saying, let's go straight to the simulation. The important thing is not forcing everyone through the same door. The important thing is knowing which door allows that person to enter the room and stay there. Because the goal is not to make every student react the same way. The goal is to help every student understand their reaction well enough to train it. And that is where English becomes more than language practice. It becomes nervous system practice, professional identity practice. It becomes learning how to stay present when your body wants protection. And in real life, that is what fluency requires, not just knowing the words, being able to reach them when the room is quiet. The question is yours, and everyone is waiting. So before your next meeting in English, don't just ask yourself, what do I need to say? Ask yourself, what happens to me when I have to say it? Do you freeze? Do you rush? Do you over-explain? Do you apologize before making your point? Do you pretend you understood because asking for repetition feels uncomfortable? That answer is not a weakness. The answer is your starting point. And if this episode made you think of a meeting, presentation, a student, a client, or a version of yourself that knows the answer but still struggles to say it out loud, send it to someone who needs to hear this. Because sometimes the first step to speaking better English is understanding what your body is trying to protect you from.